Meanwhile, on the comic box.
Bum, 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 bum. Skiddly bop, doodly bop, boo bop doo. Comics. The box.
The box. I thought we were going for like a royal horn section thing.
Ooh.
Doing something. You know what I mean? Like you were like, bah, 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 and I was like, bah, 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 bah. That's fine. Welcome to the Comic Box, everybody. Part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I am Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek. And with me, once again, is and I got a new one for you, the lascivious Liam O'Rourke. Yeah, I literally just went to a website with L adjectives. So I am set for the next several years of these. The lascivious Liam's O'Rourke, which means driven by lust, which is true because Liam's got a major hankering for some Logan.
Oh, yeah. And Poontang.
Also, thank you. I don't know if I have to beep that out or not.
That's not a swear word.
It's not. No, that's true. It is not. This week, we are talking...
Carnal acts.
This week, we are talking Old Man Logan, and that is not Hugh Jackman's scruffy old dude self in the upcoming Logan movie. We'll get to that. But the original 2009 story arc that served as sort of an inspiration for the upcoming movie. So we read the Old Man Logan arc for this week. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to be talking about how we think it will affect the movie or how it impacted the movie. Parts of it we might hope to see in the movie, mostly not. And again, we'll get to that. But first, the Weekly Geekery.
Ooh.
I know. I'm going to go first. First this time. I know.
Shocking.
I always ask you because I'm such a nice guy. Not this time, Liam. Not this time. So I am up to Volume 8 of Invincible. I'm starting with things I read, as always. I'm up to Volume 8 of Invincible on Hoopla. I've kind of slowed down on that as I try and catch up on some of my other things, including the most recent issue of Green Lanterns. Thank you for asking, Armando. That's at Koji on Twitter. Nice fellow there. He was asking me about this most recent arc with Batman in it. And yes, I did read it, and I enjoyed it. It was a nice big turning point for one of the Green Lanterns. But that's not our topic this week, so we won't get into it. I still have lots of other reading I haven't gotten to, though. I recently, and I posted this on Twitter, I bought a couple of trades last week. I might have mentioned it on the show, too. And I've just been too busy. Work has been insane these last couple of weeks. I started trying to read through my Moon Knight trades from the not current arc, but one arc before where they were doing sort of single issue stories. And I have yet to get through all of those. Plus, I have the stuff I bought that I haven't touched at all. The Black Monday Murders and the Checkmate trade. Haven't touched those. Haven't done any gaming either. I did re-download the Marvel version of Bejeweled on the tablet that I got. It's nothing special, but it's a time waster, and I'm a little afraid because I can easily get addicted to those sorts of games, and I hate it when I know there's other things I want to be doing or other media I would rather be consuming rather than a silly, repetitive game, but you just kind of got to back away for a couple of weeks.
And sometimes you just need to, turn off your brain and do something mindless for a little while, especially
that's true.
When you're stressed out.
That's absolutely true. It's just it can quickly turn into, I'm almost to this next level, or I've almost unlocked the ability to get a new character, or something like that. And that's how those games pull you in. They'll never get my money.
No.
I'm never going to spend money on it, but I worry about falling into a game too hard,
Yeah.
Especially that kind of game. I would much rather fall into, like, I have the last 2 Batman Arkham games still that I haven't played that I have on Steam, and I just haven't done them yet. I haven't played through them yet. I'd rather fall into a game like that has a little more to offer me than, the Marvel version of Bejeweled.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I've been chatting with folks and listeners on Twitter. Hi, everybody. Chris Edwards suggested The Long Walk to Valhalla on Hoopla, so I'm going to go and check that out. I can't now because I've done my 5 for the month that I get off through the app for comics. But once the new month turns around, I'm going to give that a shot. And then the Crafting Rogue was asking about what comics to read because she has only read some She-Hulk and Scarlet Witch, And this might be a topic we can cover one week, is just female-led comic books that we really enjoy. My suggestion was the first run of the New 52 Wonder Woman that's written by Brian Azzarello and illustrated by, by Cliff Chiang. I really enjoyed that run. It is sort of its own thing. It doesn't really talk a lot about the greater DC universe, so you don't need to have a whole lot of knowledge about that, and you don't need to go and read a bunch of other issues that tie in, like its own story, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my main suggestion as far as mainstream. I've also heard, Squirrel Girl is great, and Gwenpool is great, and Spider-Gwen is great as far as sort of mainstream comics. And there's other ones. But again, sorry, that's another conversation. Things I'm watching. I started watching The Crown. The Crown. The Netflix show about a young Queen Elizabeth II. So big thanks to Void for that suggestion. I started watching that with the wife, and we're about 6 episodes in, and we're enjoying it.
So has she started having her powers emerge yet? Are her parents still alive? What exactly is her origin story in this particular arc?
The Crown?
Rob, this is a comic book podcast, and you're talking about a mini-series involving the Queen of England. It has to relate somehow. Just because Void opened his big Void mouth and said you should watch it doesn't mean that we need to sit here and talk about it.
No, so it's true. So she hasn't gotten her size-changing abilities yet, but she still has that thing where she does that little tiny wave and people's brains explode.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful one. That's like the Black Bolt in the Logan story that we are going to be talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, Black Bolt of the Inhumans. Very much the same thing. This, I can say it's comic-related because there's a comic out there for it, but I haven't read it. I finally rewatched John Wick, because I wanted to go see the new one, but apparently we're going to get, snow and stuff tomorrow, so I don't know.
Big time.
Well, I've heard it's not going to be as bad. There was a time where they were saying something of up to a foot, then it was up to 6 inches, and now I'm hearing that we might not be getting too much. I'm still working from home tomorrow. It might keep me from going out. If the roads are just gross, it's not that I worry about driving on them. I worry about literally everybody else that's on the road around me. And I know you can relate to this.
Oh, I certainly can.
Yeah, so I do still want to go see John Wick 2. Have you seen that yet? Have you gotten to it?
Not yet. I might go see it on Saturday myself.
Ooh, okay. Well, maybe we'll go see it together. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
As far as stepping back to Twitter, I just want to recommend this to people. @BatLabels. It's spelled exactly like it sounds on Twitter. The account name says Batman 66 Labels, and it is phenomenal. If you ever watched the old Adam West and Burt Ward 1966 Batman television show, everything had a massive label on it to tell you exactly what it was. And one of the most recent ones is, and this is real, automatic bat alarm for detecting phone detecting equipment.
Well, that's very useful. I mean,
it's amazing.
If you're going to have phone detecting equipment, you might as well have something to detect the use of said equipment.
Well, of course. Of course. It's like when you were in grade school and literally everything in the room had a label on it telling you this is pencil sharpener, just to teach you how to spell and stuff. Apparently Batman needs that. Or maybe he uses it for Robin.
I don't think they brought this up on the show too frequently, but Alfred is actually a known Boy Scout. So be prepared.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And depending on your continuity, he was also in the Royal Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how he learned to be a medic and patch up Batman and stuff. And lastly, well, you can see it on my list here. Do you want me to wait until you get through your weekly geekery before we address Tolkien?
We can talk about Tolkien whenever.
Okay. Well, the last thing that I have is a thing that both of us did. And it was last week I mentioned that I was going to be a panelist at the local Tolkien convention. There was a Tolkien, as they call it, event. And I got Liam to join me, sort of last minute, and it was fantastic. He came on for the airing of grievances panel. He completely over-prepared, which was amazing, and I feel bad we didn't have time to get through everything. I feel like we had a pretty captive audience. And there's pictures on Twitter, pictures on our Comic Box Twitter account at ComicBoxCast.
Yeah, people were definitely into the discussion. I mean, people wanted to have their fair say also, and had things to say about the things we had to say. So,
oh, you don't screw around with Tolkien fans, man.
No, they're pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Especially when you got some beers in them. Thank you, Bauhaus Brewery.
Yes, absolutely. No, it was a really good time because that's who we had. We had one of the guys that worked there up with us was the third person on our panel.
Yeah, and he had a pretty sick sleeve tattoo there of the Tolkien-inspired stuff.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous of that. I don't have any tattoos myself.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking, like, if I did it would have to be some sort of, like, nerd half sleeve, and I would have to figure out how to reconcile having both a Tolkien, some sort of Lord of the Rings thing on there, as well as, like, a Green Lantern thing on there. Like, is that just too many rings,
You'd have to have one arm devoted to one sort of ring and the other arm devoted to the other sort of ring.
Or have Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet, and on it he is wearing both the One Ring and a Green Lantern ring.
Hey, there you go.
I could see that.
Yep.
Like a hybrid of Sauron's Gauntlet with the One Ring and the Infinity Gems. This is never happening, by the way. I don't have a fear of needles. I just have an apprehension about being like, I don't know that there's anything that, is so important that I need it to see it in the mirror every time. I'm just happy looking at all this. You can't see me. I'm motioning to my beautiful face.
And you don't want it to be too good because then people will hunt you for your pelt.
That is also correct, Liam.
That has been known to happen when it comes to the really high-end tattooing.
Yes. Yeah, when people get the full back tattoos, sometimes that makes a good rug.
It puts the lotion on its skin again.
Yeah. Yes, I do. Why don't you go ahead with your weekly geekery?
Well, for me, it was kind of a light week for geekery. I mean, I played my normal video games as usual. Crotch Niblet on Steam. Look me up. But
did you get to? Sorry, I'm totally cutting you off because I'm a jerk. Did you get to Overwatch yet?
No, I haven't. My buddy has yet to hook me up with that code to get the free download. But I went and actually watched the first of the 3 Hobbit movies in preparation for our TolCon.
Yeah.
I also watched the animated Hobbit movie from 1977, which childhood favorite of mine and still does a better job than the 3 movies that Peter Jackson made in telling the story of the Hobbit. But I also, this week, went and rewatched a couple of the installments in the MCU.
Okay.
I rewatched, Captain America Civil War? Is that one? So
yeah, that's our most recent one.
Okay, that's not like Avengers 3.
It's basically
it totally
Avengers.
Is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I watched that one. Rather, I rewatched it. I did see some of the first, the beginning of the movie I hadn't really seen before. I got there late when my buddies were watching it, so the opening scenes I hadn't seen, so that was new. But I also went and rewatched what I consider to be my favorite installment in the MCU, that being Ant-Man.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. Okay. That might be one of my least favorite entries in the MCU.
Okay. See, for me, it's, it's funny. The Ant-Man is a funny movie, and that's what I enjoy watching is comedies. So a lot of the other installments in the MCU have kind of left me feeling a little dry when I'm watching them, They might have a few scenes that I enjoy. They might have a couple good little comic relief moments, but a lot of it is, just watching CGI thrash around with CGI and stuff like that. So it's not quite as interesting to watch. You've seen it before and, whatever. Whereas Ant-Man took a bit of a different twist on the superhero story with the whole, heist element of the movie. And I did like Michael Douglas, which is a rarity for me. I'm usually kind of like on the fence or not a fan of Michael Douglas, but I thought he was good as Hank Pym. So yeah, I really enjoyed it again. It still made me laugh. And the whole Paul Rudd's character having custody issues and having like a, sort of a strange daughter, that resonates a bit with me. So for me, the movie held up both from a dramatic perspective as well as like the comedic element of the movie.
Okay. Yeah, because for me, I think it's just always the idea that it's a what could have been. Like, you see elements of a great movie in there, but then it turns into what I assume Marvel made it into rather than Edgar Wright, who was originally at the helm before he quit over Marvel's handling of it, where it became guy finds powers and then has to fight other guy who has slightly increased version of his powers sort of thing. Like, all of our origin stories is somebody fighting somebody else who does the exact same thing, and I think we don't need that. Like, I want to see somebody have to figure out, show me how Captain America would fight, the Ironmonger kind of thing. Like, those sort of ideas of villains and heroes that don't actually match up, because in the real world, the bad guy isn't, I use magic. Oh, whew, thank God, so does the bad guy. So I clearly know how to defeat them. Or we both shrink, so that's perfect kind of thing. So I think Ant-Man I thought was fine. I think it just sits lower on my list because I watch it and I can just see a better movie in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can understand that. And there are elements of the movie that, I picked up on here and there that I was like, didn't really think about the first time. And, it was more of a like, oh, well, that's not plausible, or, that little piece of it doesn't make sense or whatever. I was also looking to see how well it left itself open for a sequel, which I'm sure it'll get because it's a part of the MCU and they always get a sequel.
Oh, it is. Do you want me to...
Yeah, I think I remember hearing some vagaries about it, but...
Yeah, it's the sequel is going to be called Ant-Man and the Wasp.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
But they had the one guy, he was sinister from the beginning, trying to get them to weaponize the whole thing from the get-go, and Michael Douglas punches him in the face in the opening scene. Well, that guy, at least from what I remember seeing in the movie, watching, he seems to get away with a vial of the, not the Pym particle, but the Yellow Jacket formula.
Okay.
So it seems like from that perspective, we might not have Yellow Jacket, specifically, but we will probably have, a similar villain who can grow or shrink, probably, since Ant-Man has developed the giant man part of his abilities now.
Yep.
But the scene for me, the best, is the Thomas the Train fight.
Of course.
Makes me laugh so hard. And it's also kind of just like, visually fun to see. So, yeah, I had a good time watching it.
Well, cool. I wish I liked it more than I did, but it scenes like that where you watch it, you just know that the whole movie could have been closer to that. The whole movie could have been weird and out there and amazing, and instead you got another sort of cookie-cutter movie in the end.
Yeah, it could have been better, but it's still my favorite. And, but again, my favorite other movie is probably Iron Man.
Oh, absolutely.
That's probably the second best in my personal favorite.
I'm with you there. That's right up there on mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Rewatchable. Very, very rewatchable.
Infinitely.
Yeah. He made it out of scraps in a cave. Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah, the dude was not happy. He did not abide.
He did not. But
he did not.
To be fair, there was a beverage involved.
This is true. Was that it?
That is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to cut you off if there was more, and I don't want to seem rude by asking you, well, Liam, anything else? All right, well, let's why don't you throw us over to news then? We'll move on to some news. I got 2 pieces of news for everybody.
Okay. News.
Thank you. I won't bother separating these. I got a Marvel movie news and a DC movie news. Starting with Marvel, we are getting an X-Force movie so far. Things can always change. But here's the cool thing. The X-Force movie is going to be co-written by Ryan Reynolds and Joe Carnahan, and supposedly directed by Joe Carnahan and executive produced by Ryan Reynolds. Carnahan worked with Reynolds on Smokin' Aces, which I swear I thought was directed by Troy Duffy, the guy who did Boondock Saints. I don't know why, but this whole time I thought that Troy Duffy was the guy that made that movie, so I guess.
Well, there is a lot of rope and discussions of rope, so.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, why I thought that was his. But he also directed, notably, The Grey, which is Liam Neeson's versus Wolves. Do you ever see The Grey?
I have not, actually.
It's a pretty intense flick.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, but it wasn't bad, and it had that very sort of hardcore ending where it's Liam Neeson versus a wolf, and he takes these little mini bottles of booze, and he literally tapes them between his fingers and then breaks them on a rock, so he has like Wolverine claws out of little bottles of alcohol because they were on a plane that went down.
Awesome.
Yeah, so he's gonna Wolverine punch the wolf to death, and that's how like the movie ends, is like them squaring off and Liam Neeson going at the wolf. Spoilers for the Gray. It's been years, so sorry. But I just assume if Ryan Reynolds is involved, though, that means we are going to get Deadpool in this movie, and we already know that the general plot of Deadpool 2, or part of it at least, is supposed to be the introduction of the character of Cable, who is the leader of X-Force. So I have no idea what to expect from this movie, but I guess put your faith in Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. We're going to put our faith in Ryan Reynolds. He's a nice guy. And then my DC movie thing is Matt Reeves, and we talked about this a little bit last week. The people that were up for the Batman directing position, it sounds like it is Matt Reeves, as confirmed by a tweet from Ben Affleck or something today. So this is the guy that directed Cloverfield, and Dawn of Planet of the Apes is now going to be our director of the Batman instead of Ben Affleck. Good luck, Matt Reeves. I hope the script is good and it's a good movie. I remember Cloverfield vaguely. I never saw Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. They're both movies that people went to go see, so he's still working.
And the Reeves family has a long-standing history with the WB.
Yes, they do. Yeah, I don't know that there's a relation there, though. Or is there? Like, do you know a thing I don't?
You have to go back far enough, but yeah, there's a relation there.
Just wherever the origin of the last name is?
Yeah, it might be somewhere in, the cradle of civilization, but there is a relation there.
However many degrees of Kevin Bacon there's a relation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
The Reeves don't fall far from the tree. Boom!
Oh no. I really want to make a joke about falling far from the horse, but I'm not going to, because I'm not a bad person. I kind of hate myself. Did that one take you a second?
It did. It came right to me, but it took me a second to get over how funny I find myself. So.
Yeah, that's dark. That's dark. So for our pull list for next week, our topic for next week, I don't actually have a specific comic for us to read, but the topic I think we're going to be covering is the comics industry and sort of distribution. So my thought is take this week to catch up on some stuff and try something new and throw it out at me on Twitter or on our subreddit. So, Liam, for you, I want you to go in and finally dig into that Superior Foes of Spider-Man.
Okay.
I am going to dig into this Checkmate trade that I have because I have not read. I think I've read like 2 loose issues randomly of that series. So that's going to be something totally new to me. So we are going to read those, and then next week we're going to talk about how we buy comics and how it's sort of a monopoly out there of this one company that controls all of the distribution of comics. And how that, impacts what comics we even get in our stores and stuff like that. So we're going behind the scenes. We're pulling back the curtain next week.
An expose.
Yes, an expose. And that is it for our news and for our pull list. So I'm going to bring us into the topic of the week with a bow. Bow, 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 topic of the week.
Yeah.
See, I was all dramatic, and then it was not dramatic at the end. I'm not very good at that.
I do like the anticlimax.
Thank you. Yeah. But this miniseries doesn't have one of those, for sure. This has a proper climax.
Oh, yeah, it does.
And then a rest period before they got back into it later with another series. That was a reference to nothing but comic books. Old Man Logan is an 8-issue storyline. I'm sorry, do you mind? I'm gonna throw in the behind the scenes stuff before we dig into the story itself.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Old Man Logan is what we're talking about here. It was an 8-issue storyline from the regular Wolverine ongoing series written by Mark Millar, and artist was Steve McNiven. Did an amazing job on this thing. The book started in June 2008, and it ran through Wolverine issues 66 through 72, and finished off with Wolverine giant-sized Old Man Logan in September 2009. The story is set in an alternate universe that has been designated, and again, who does this designation? Like, I feel like I need to just take a month and dive in, and we'll find somewhere in the deep web is the man or woman or gathering of people who are allowed to, pick out the numbers for this Earth. So this Earth, the Old Man Logan Earth, is Earth 807128 for some reason.
My favorite universe is 5678309. Or 8675309.
See, if you have to correct yourself, it's not funny anymore. 8675309.
That's the magic of editing.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that,
Make me funny.
There is also currently an ongoing Old Man Logan series that does feature kind of the same character, pulled back to the past. Gotta get back to the past, Samurai Jack. Sorry. And this takes place... Samurai Jack. That takes place after the 2015 Secret Wars crossover, but we're going to ignore that part of Old Man Logan. I know you said you read at least one issue of that. I want to ignore it because I don't think it's really going to be pertinent at all to our conversation of Old Man Logan versus what we want to see in the movie.
Yeah, not within the episode or the issue that I did read. It didn't have anything to do with the actual Old Man Logan that we did read for this week.
Yeah. Before we even get into the story, I just want to bring up how cool this is. And I didn't spend a ton of time doing research. I wanted to try and see how this story got pitched, sort of where the idea came from, and what it took for Marvel to say okay to somebody coming in and saying, hey, so I want to do an arc on the Wolverine book, but there's going to be absolutely no connection to the ongoing storyline, and it's going to take place in the future, and then it's just going to end and still not have any connection to the ongoing storyline after that. Like, it's totally an aside just for several months to tell a random story. And I just want to make the point of, do more of this.
Oh, yeah.
This was 2008 that you've done. Look at the greatest comic book stories that people always keep going back to. All-Star Superman, The Dark Knight, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, or... Batman Year One,
Superman Red Sun.
Superman Red Sun. Now, some of those, like with Red Sun, that was the Elseworld stuff, which I do love. But it's the idea that even in a regular monthly ongoing comic, take a break and just tell me a good story. That's the reason I'm so looking forward to this Logan movie, because it seems like it's taking a break from everything else just to tell us a good Wolverine story. The fact that this takes place in a completely different universe from the regular Marvel 616, the Earth 616 universe, the fact that it's set in a sort of pseudo-post-apocalyptic future, perfect. Because in the end, you're just telling me another story that gets to the heart of who that character is and examines them from another angle. And I just wanted to make that point. More of that, please. Because those are the stories we actually remember. Well, I mean, these days we'll say, oh, there was a good run of this book that I really enjoyed. But as far as single stories, it's things like that. Or like the Rock of Ages story in Grant Morrison's JLA. Also took place in the future. Alternate reality thing. But it was an amazing story. And it was just a couple of issues.
So did the original Age of Apocalypse storyline. That was just right in the middle of their normal stories.
Yeah,
and then took
exactly. And I was thinking about adding that to my list on the outline. I didn't, just because it was a crossover.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't a single in one issue, as there were multiple. But you could just read one of those books.
Yeah.
That it's just interrupted. We're going to tell you a different story now. Mm-hmm. And I love that kind of storytelling.
And part of it that I think it makes it enjoyable is that when you're reading a superhero comic, basically your hero is going to survive. A lot of the, secondary characters are probably going to survive, but they might, once in a while, add in a new character with the intent of killing them off, or killing off an old version of a character to bring in a new iteration of that character. But with a story like this, it's like you don't know what's going to happen.
Yes.
Like anything could happen, but you know ultimately that the character that you may be interested in reading it for is still going to be there afterwards. It's just taking an opportunity to really tell you something interesting where anything can go down and then like not have the consequences of that necessarily have any lasting consequence to the real character and its continuity.
And that is why I love the Elseworld stuff so much, is because everybody's on the chopping block. You can do whatever you want with the characters. At the core, they're still the same. It's like all the different interpretations of Sherlock Holmes we get.
Yeah.
Like the character has become its own archetype after so many years. Or if we're going back to that, literature of the day, you also have Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and Frankenstein himself. The reason that these characters have lasted so long is thanks to reinterpretation. And we do get that through the different movies. Like we keep getting new Batmans, or Spider-Man being rebooted for a third time in 10 years kind of thing. And that's okay. It's tough with these monthly ongoing stories for them to do that because of that sense of continuity. People want what they buy this month to be the same as what they bought last month, to be the same as what they bought a year ago, 10 years ago, whatever. And so because it's that steady line of new readers popping in, you don't know when, Marvel's trying to take care of that these days where they constantly reboot with number ones. And it's a little tedious, especially because when they do that, they're not necessarily telling a new story. It might be a new arc. It might be a new creative team that might have a new take on a character, but they're not being like, we're going to go and just tell a one-off story where anything can happen, like with Old Man Logan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall we cut into the breakdown of the story?
Sure. Yeah.
So this story takes place, we'll say, at least 40 years in the future.
50.
50, excuse me. So 50 years in the future of what we consider current Marvel continuity, the present-day Marvel comics. At this point in time, the X-Men are dead. Most of the superheroes out there and supervillains are dead. And the remaining supervillains have carved up what's left of the USA into territories. Logan, Wolverine, who just refers to himself as Logan now, is now a pacifist, and he lives a poor life as a farmer with his wife Maureen and his kids Scotty and Jade. And then the Hulk kids show up. These are the inbred children and grandchildren and so on and so forth of the Hulk and She-Hulk, who is Hulk's cousin. And they show up. They're basically the mob, and they control the entire West Coast. So they're there to get their protection money, and Logan can't pay, so instead he just allows himself to get beaten. And he knows that he'll heal, even though his healing factor, hint wink, doesn't work as well as it used to, if that sounds familiar, Logan trailer. Then he's visited by Hawkeye, who is now blind and driving, yes, really, the Spider-Mobile, who wants to hire Logan to help him take a cross-country trip to bring, and spoilers here, 3, 2, 1, to deliver what turns out to be super soldier serum to what Hawkeye believes is an underground resistance group that wants to restart the Avengers and take the country back. Logan says yes because he needs the money to help pay his rent to the Hulks and keep his family protected. And basically the rest is a giant road trip that takes us through this future world, and we get to see how the country's been cut up, and we get to see who is still around and the children or grandchildren of characters that are still around. And in the end, as you can kind of tell from the cover of the different trades, is, again, spoilers, 3, 2, and 1, the Wolverine makes a return, Logan pops his claws, and then all hell breaks loose.
Oh, man,
and he takes out lots and lots of people before he leaves for parts unknown with a little baby Hulk-ling, I guess, on his back.
Bruce Banner Jr.
Yeah, and it's very much a scene reminiscent of the comic Lone Wolf and Cub, which I believe was also like a TV show, and there might have been a couple movies even.
I think you're right.
Yeah. But that's sort of our last scene. By this point, his family is no longer around, and pretty much everybody else is no longer around. And that is our story of Old Man Logan. It's the story of we find out what happens to the heroes. We find out why Logan refuses to pop his claws or refer to himself as Wolverine anymore. And we see what exactly it takes for him to come back. And it is a really good story.
Yeah, it was very atmospheric. One of the things I really liked is that you learn what happened to the country bit by bit, as opposed to having someone sit you down and tell you from beginning to end what exactly happened.
Right.
I think it was really interesting that, like the Hulk got California, then like Magneto got a chunk, and the Kingpin got a chunk.
And we're living in Doom's, I don't remember what the name is, my comic's sitting in the other room, but we're living in Dr. Doom's section down the center of the country, the Central Time, basically.
Yeah, we're in Doom's lair.
Doom's lair.
Right? Yeah. And the East Coast is the President's Quarter, run by the Red Skull, and that was, we'll get there, but that was one of my absolute favorite scenes in the whole series that we read.
Was the Red Skull taking out Captain America and saying he's going to be in the White House?
No.
Or the
ultimate resolution, we will say, to the Red Skull there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Poetic justice.
Now, I think it's important to note that this idea of the supervillains getting together and taking out all the superheroes isn't new, especially from Mark Millar, because this is what happened in the book Wanted. All of the supervillains getting together and taking out all of the superheroes. So now, even though there are supervillains still around, they very rarely they never wear costumes in public, only during private gatherings, and they have split up the world in their control. So he kind of took a thing he already did that, granted, was popular.
Yeah. I still really like it.
It was a good book. I wasn't as big a fan of the movie, but that's because the movie had no resemblance to the book.
No. A few character names, and that's about it.
Yeah, but it seems like he really wanted to stick to this idea of there are how many supervillains to every superhero.
Yeah, they talk about there being like 40 or 50 supervillains for every superhero.
So if they finally just stop fighting over, between themselves or trying to attack people on their own, that they would actually be a force to be reckoned with.
And to stop doing the stupid power matching stuff where it's like, oh, you're a strong guy? Well, I'm a strong guy. But like, no. You want the strong guy to fight the really mental guy, because the mental guy will be able to just use their powers to overcome his strength. That's the sort of thing that these people actually decide to do, and it's successful. Who would have thunk it?
Which is why I was bringing it up when you were talking about Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Make them fight people where they have to try and figure out how their power set would even work.
Yeah, exactly. How does Wolverine fight Magneto,
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite comics as a kid was Spider-Man trying to figure out how to fight the Tri-Sentinel, which was like 3 Sentinels attached to one another. It wasn't a very good concept for a Sentinel. But how does Spider-Man fight the giant robot? Because he's not quite strong enough, to take it out, and it's shooting lasers at him, so it's not his usual level of villain. And I like that kind of stuff. Or one of the more famous ones is Spider-Man fighting the Juggernaut.
Yeah, definitely.
It was those sorts of stories where you pull in a character that's meant for another hero, and you have to get more creative with it, and then it shows you a different side of that hero.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So some of the things I wrote down, just a short list here of some of my favorite things that popped up as they were traveling across the country. Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I dive into this?
Go right ahead.
It's sort of in order. First, it's the friendly Ultron 8. First they go into a place called Hammer Falls. And I love that that's what it's named, because in the center of town, it's Thor's hammer, where it fell when Thor fell, and nobody's been able to pick it up since. So now it's become like a relic that people pray to in the hopes that Thor, as a god, will return someday. And in the town of Hammer Falls, we meet Spider-Man's youngest daughter, who is already, seems like she's sort of in her 40s maybe already, who is married to a friendly Ultron called Ultron 8, who is just like the nerdiest Mr. Rogers kind of guy.
Yeah, he's like a Ned Flanders made out of Ultron.
Yeah, except he's an Ultron. What I didn't like, which was kind of weird, is we found out that this female character, I didn't write her name down, who is Spider-Man's youngest daughter, was Hawkeye's third wife. So that means that Hawkeye, who is older than Spider-Man from the get-go anyway, hooks up with Spider-Man's daughter, and they have a daughter who is sort of the new Spider-Girl sort of character in this book. I found that to be odd. Like, I guess they were trying to show us that Hawkeye was really cool because even the young kids dig him, but I took that as kind of creepy.
Okay.
I don't know. That was just on me. Also, Hawkeye absolutely having no problem murdering people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the movies we've seen, he does that all the time, you know.
That is true. I guess if they're going off the idea that he was, you know, an undercover SHIELD agent or something, rather than in the comics when he just was a circus performer.
Yeah.
Turned villain. And it's comic books, so you never really kill people.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he's using a lethal weapon all the time. He just has all these trick arrows and stuff, you know?
Right. Where in here he doesn't. And yeah. And being blind, he just sort of aims at the sound that people make.
Yeah,
well.
I mean the character in general. But yeah, in this iteration of the character, he is a lot less reliant on novelties and tricks and stuff like that, and is straight up like using a sword and a gun, I think, a couple of times, and yeah, his straight up bow and arrow, and he plugs quite a few people. So yeah, he's mowing through quite a few people to get to his daughter Ashley, who we find out has been kidnapped by the Kingpin because she took up the mantle of the Spider Girl or Spider Woman. I'm not 100% who they specifically name her as, but then Daredevil and the Punisher are the other two, and the three of them try to take back their town, and it doesn't go well for them. But we do get to then see the Punisher and Daredevil fight raptors.
Yes.
And, well, not so much fight as
I was going to say
eviscerated by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody brought in, and they do say it in the comic where, you know, the dinosaurs from the Savage Land, which is Antarctica, I believe.
Yeah.
Show up and are sort of roaming free.
Yeah.
And that's where one of the big stars, I guess, of Old Man Logan, the thing that a lot of people said, oh, well, it has this in it. Oh, now you have to read it, is the fact that it is a symbiote T-Rex. So it's the Venom symbiote, which is attached to a Tyrannosaurus Rex from the Savage Land.
Which is admittedly pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's that mixture of, I mean, there's the over-the-top violence, the fact that you don't know what's actually happening, but there's these little, like, when you're a kid and you're like, you have your box of toys and you're trying to figure out what can play with what, and you're like, you know what, screw it. This is a Venom T-Rex now, and it's going to fight Spider-Man kind of thing. It's those sort of gleeful child moments of just doing something silly that works very well.
Yeah. It did play a little bit of the silly, but it kept itself pretty serious.
Yeah, but it just never really amounted to anything. There was no, like, big fight with the symbiote T-Rex. It was just there and chasing them for a while. So it was clearly just there because it was cool to have.
Yeah, although it does present us with the opportunity to be introduced to the Black Bolt in a dramatic fashion.
That is true. That is true. You did need something big, and then we find out that Black Bolt has been staying with Emma Frost, I believe.
They marry, apparently.
See, that wasn't the way that I looked at it, though, because in the comic, there's a conversation. So Emma Frost runs a place called the Forbidden Quarter, which is a place where mutants can still stick around. And she mentions, and this I really like, this is a thing that I might actually expect in the movie, outside of Wolverine's slowing healing factor just from being older, when Emma Frost says that we thought mutants were going to be this new stage of evolution. They weren't. It was just a fluke. There hasn't been a new mutant in over 40 years, and these days there's only 20 or so left in the world. I really like that idea. I like that idea that they're not the next stage of evolution that are here early, just something went wrong, and for 10, 20 years, mutants were born with powers. There's a lot of other comic books like that deal with that sort of issue of, only the people born in this town for this year get superpowers, a very limited amount, because that makes the story more interesting. Instead of you're going to turn another corner and find another mutant, it's nope, you get 20.
Yeah.
And we have to tell the story with those characters.
And in this, they didn't tell us anything about, like, who any of the other mutants were. So we don't know if it's anybody that we know or whether it's just there are 20 left.
Right, yeah. I don't think we get introduced to any other mutants in the story.
No,
at all.
It's just Emma Frost, and then I don't know if you consider the Inhumans to be mutants or not, but...
No, they have a totally different origin. When we get closer to the Inhuman show coming out, I'll do an episode all about the Inhumans and sort of explain what their deal is. But I believe it was Hawkeye who got upset at Emma Frost and said, you had Black Bolt, you didn't need to marry. And she's like, no, I married to keep our people safe. And then as it shows them leaving, it shows a close-up of Dr. Doom. So I think the Forbidden Quarter must be in Doom's lair, and Emma Frost married Dr. Doom as sort of a, the White Queen, Emma Frost marrying Dr. Doom, who was the leader of his own nation. That makes sense, because I would see Doom marrying somebody for political reasons, like an old school, match between houses in the medieval period kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I have two other things that I really liked. I liked Dwight's toll, the idea that there's a kid who gets his hands, he's just a young kid, and he gets his hands on Ant-Man's helmet, and he demands that people pay him a very small toll in order to cross this little bridge. And he's like, nope, you don't mess with Dwight, man. Yeah. You don't. And it shows all of these bodies under the bridge as they're driving past.
And he himself appears to be a little person. So, it's already not intimidating. And then he's like, wearing the Ant-Man helmet and demanding 80 cents to go across this bridge. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a fun mix of serious.
He controls the ants because it's like giant radioactive ants or something, right?
I don't even think it showed the ants. It just that there were some dead bodies underneath, and that you don't mess with Dwight.
And that's great because it's that suggestion of Ant-Man being far more dangerous than anybody ever gave him credit for. And I've always liked that in comic books as well. Yeah. That the people who seem to have really weird or silly powers, and you realize, no, not if they actually use it right.
Yeah.
Any power can be incredibly dangerous. And then my last thing is simply when he finally pops his claws, they do a double-page spread, which you don't see a lot of in comic books anymore. You usually just see splash pages because so many comics are now done digitally as well. I think we see less of the two-page spread.
Yeah. And
it's a black page with red text, and it just says SNIKT, which is the SNIKT. It's the onomatopoeia that is used to describe the sound of Wolverine's claws popping. And I loved that because they make it, and they hold off for such a long time, and they make it such a dramatic moment for him to pop his claws.
Yeah. For me, one of the other things that I really, really enjoyed, and I'm currently sitting here looking at the panel, it's when they come across Pym's Falls. Mm-hmm. And it's named thusly because the massive skeleton of Hank Pym is laying across the road, and you have to drive underneath it in order to travel down the highway. And I mean, the scale of this thing is beyond massive. I mean, wow. And to think that he got taken out at that stage, it's amazing how powerful the super villains must have been to be able to take just him down that way.
Yeah, and he's not the only massive skeleton that they see. They also see the massive skeleton of Loki.
Yeah, with the Baxter building dropped on top of him.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that stuff interesting. It reminds me that those sort of things that you see remind me very much of Earth X, which was sort of the Marvel version of Kingdom Come, where it was the entire Marvel universe in this future landscape where it's not exactly post-apocalyptic. It's more just everybody on Earth gets superpowers, and so here's what happens to the Marvel heroes. And we might need to read that at some point. That's a really good read. I think you would really enjoy that.
Okay.
And I would love to see it maybe as like an animated series or something. I don't think I could see it in live action. I'm getting off point. But yeah, no, I love those things because that's, I think, what makes this one stand out so many years later, that this is still such an important and well-respected Wolverine story. It's not just a Wolverine story. It's a Marvel Universe story told through the eyes of Wolverine. And so you get a writer that gets to play and say, here's what happens to this guy, and here's what happens to this guy, and here's what happens to this guy. And I love that stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah. The other thing that we mentioned but hadn't really talked about the resolution of is the Red Skull in this story.
Yes, go for it.
Man. So Red Skull, his first introduction in this is a flashback to the day where the supervillains have taken over. And you see Captain America laying beneath the rubbles of the Capitol building, just bloodied, and the Red Skull is gloating over him and telling him about how, America has failed and how he is going to carve up the country and that he will personally get the White House. And then he kills Captain America, and then it flashes forward to the what we call now, and he's standing in his trophy room, and you get to see the Silver Surfer's board and like the Doctor Strange's cape and Thor's helmet, Spider-Man's cowl, and the Iron Man suit. But of course, chief among them is the Iron Man shield hung up on the wall, and the Red Skull is adorned in the costume of the Captain America, with blood stains still intact and everything. So
yeah, he just couldn't let go, and so he still sits there and he just looks at all of his old relics, and he even wears it like it's a bathrobe or something.
Yeah,
like he's wearing the mask and the whole thing. Yeah, for me, there's the single small panel that shows a close-up of Captain America's face when the Red Skull says, "Guess who gets the White House?" And he's crying.
Yep.
It's just the tears streaming down from his face because he knows that they've lost and the American dream is over and that sort of thing. That is so heartbreaking. Like, I know at the end when you find out what happens that this whole thing is spoilers, but I'll say spoilers again. When Wolverine finally gets home with the money in time, but finds out that the Hulk kids just got bored and decided to come and kill his family for fun. And that's when he decides to take his revenge. Like, as sad as that moment is, I think the biggest one for me was Captain America crying on the rubble that was the Capitol building with the Red Skull standing over him, because he's not crying for himself. He's not sad that he lost anything. It's everybody else losing, because that's the point of Captain America's character,
Yeah.
So that to me was probably the lowest point in the whole thing, is just this guy who embodies the American dream and the American ideal. And this is the Bucky Barnes version, we should mention, because he has the brown eyes and the Bucky Barnes costume, because it was a time when Bucky was Captain America in the regular Marvel Universe in 2009.
That's true.
But, oh man, that is such a hard-hitting moment. And then, yeah, to see when Wolverine just decides, or excuse me, Logan still at this point decides it's going to happen, and he goes and he takes out the Red Skull without ever popping his claws.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they're fighting in the trophy room and using the trophies, because the Red Skull is using like the Black Knight's sword,
mm-hmm.
and Logan is using Captain America's shield.
Yeah, and there's that great moment there.
Yeah,
when the first time, well, when the Red Skull is trying to hit Logan with the sword, he brings up the shield, and just the act of hitting that shield held up against an enemy again makes the Red Skull pause, and he just goes, no. Like, for a second he flashes back to thinking Captain America is standing there again.
Yeah, because he's been talking a little bit to himself and to one of his guards, and he's got this paranoid idea that the Captain America could come back, and
because
with
that's
the
what
whole
they do.
super suit serum thing that Hawkeye was transporting. It is still a looming threat in some realm. So for him, yeah, it's a mixture of his old demons and his new, and yeah, Wolverine really brings it to him. And yeah, I mean, again, spoilers if you still haven't had the whole thing spoiled for you.
Yeah.
He just decapitates the Red Skull using the shield, and oh man, that is one of the greatest panels in comics. That is so wonderful. Especially with everything that we've read up till this point within this universe, to have that happen, man.
And it's not even the biggest fight in the
No.
whole thing. Arguably, the biggest fight is at the end when Wolverine goes up against one of his classic enemies, the Hulk, for sort of the final time.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, his classic enemy. His first appearance was in a Hulk comic fighting the Hulk.
That's correct.
You know?
Yeah.
And then for Wolverine to take the Iron Man suit, and oh man, I thought that was really cool too. And just blow his way out of the White House and, you know, use it to like get back home to try to save his family.
And it was a really clever way to wrap things up as well, because we have this long road trip from point A to point B, and you're like, all right, but we need to get him back to his family so we can resolve that and finish up the story. What's the fastest way to get him back there that we can figure out? Well, we're in a trophy room, right? So we're going to have the remains of an Iron Man armor, and so he's going to throw that on, and he's going to rocket himself back, so it only takes him, you know, a couple of hours to get back across the country. And no, I like that a lot. I thought that was very clever.
Yeah.
So with this book, I mean, overall, clearly we're both big fans, but the question that we are here to answer is, of this story, which serves as at least a thematic inspiration for Logan, which is going to come out next weekend, what are you hoping to see from this book in that movie? Because we know it's sort of a mashup of that and X-23 Paradise Lost, which we read a couple weeks ago. So what from Old Man Logan are you hoping to see?
You know, I think the element that I would like to see the most is just the world that we have in the future, you know? A lot of the X-Men movies and comics and everything, you know, they always talk about what the future is going to be, what it holds, and it's so often an optimistic future. I think it'll be really interesting to see something where it's not an optimistic result. You know, everything turned out bad, you know, that the mutants were not the next wave of humanity, that it was not, you know, the next evolution for the species, and that there are some real serious negative consequences that came about in the world on the whole, you know. So I think that's the thing that I'm more excited to see, is that it's not just going to be set in the 60s or set in the 70s, you know, it'll actually be set in a world where we don't know, you know, we don't have a compass for that world, you know.
Yeah, and it seems from the trailers and everything I've seen, this isn't necessarily post-apocalyptic. He just lives on the, like, Mexican border in the Southwest somewhere.
Yeah.
So the reason that it's all sandy and stuff, because if you see the other clips from the movies, he works in the city driving a limo. That's why he has the limo at the place, and he's always wearing that suit, is because that's his job, is he goes and he drives people around. He's a limo driver now.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to get that post-apocalyptic thing. I feel like we're not going to get the Wolverine is responsible for the death of all of the X-Men like we did, spoilers, whoops, in Old Man Logan. We've talked about that in previous weeks, where the whole point of all the other X-Men being gone is Mysterio, in conjunction with the other villains, tricked Wolverine into thinking he was fighting a bunch of villains, when in reality he was murdering his friends and fellow X-Men. But
yeah.
So I think, again, we're basically going to get the thematic stuff. I don't want to see anything about kids of other characters, I don't think. I think that would kind of feel forced, even though it worked in this one because we did a 50-year jump. And it makes sense that there would be kids around of other characters. I'm kind of okay with just what we're seeing, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the city he works in is going to be run by a Magneto or anything like that. I think we'll see the element of no new heroes kind of thing. Like, it was all just a dream. It doesn't really exist anymore. And beyond that, I think it's just going to be sort of a reverse origin story of Wolverine now moving in to save somebody else from an evil government agency that's trying to make a weapon.
Yeah. Do you think that we are going to see Wolverine die in the movie?
I kind of hope so.
I
but
think it would be interesting to see.
I kind of hope so, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, in the comic books, there's only one way he can be killed, right? And it's with the Murray something. There's a special blade that's adamantium that can cut the heads off of people with like adamantium skeletons.
Yeah, the Muramasa, I believe is the name of it.
Yeah, and it nullifies healing factors.
Yes.
So there's an actual physical weapon, and the way they did kill Wolverine currently in the comics is they just literally he like had no healing factor, and then they covered him in adamantium, so he's a frozen block.
Yeah.
But that's not to say he won't, I guess, break out at some point when they want that Wolverine back. Right now, the Wolverine in the MCU is Old Man, or not MCU, the regular Marvel Comics universe, or 616, is the Old Man Logan version from the Old Man Logan storyline who's been pulled back in time. If they do kill him, I'm kind of hoping it's this heart-wrenching thing where he's injured to the point where he has X-23 maybe kill him, because she's the only one who could, because she also has adamantium claws.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no. I see it as a similar ending to Old Man Logan. I see it being the lone wolf and cub. I think Professor X is certainly going to die. Probably everybody else that they're friends with might die. And it's just going to be Wolverine and X-23 hitting the road and just driving off sort of into the sunset, I think is going to be the ending of this one. And I think that would be the appropriate ending as well. We don't need to see those future stories or anything like that. Like, I think that would make sense. Otherwise, what's your ending going to be? Like, X-23 on her own with a dead Wolverine and a dead Logan and a 11-year-old girl alone in the world? That's not very uplifting. I guess it doesn't have to be super uplifting, but it's going to have a bittersweet ending is my money.
Yeah. Although it would be fun if they just out of left field threw in the ending that this one had, where he cuts his way out of the Hulk.
Well, they can't use the Hulk, but yeah, the Blob, we'll say.
They don't even have to call him the Hulk, because honestly, in this, he does not look like the Hulk as we know him to look like. He's just gigantic and fat and green. So, I mean, if you just didn't refer to him that way, I think you could do it. You could probably get away with it. Yeah. But I think one of the coolest uses of the character in this comic that we just read was that he's not always the Hulk. He is right. Bruce Banner, and that he is Hulk strong even when he's not all green and huge. Right. So he looks like he's this little old man, but then when Wolverine comes in to kill him, he just knocks him clean, out of the mouth of the cave and probably a couple 100 feet. And then the two of them really start getting into it.
And I do like that so far it looks like we're not necessarily going to get in this movie another just angry, super-powered person for Wolverine to fight one-on-one like that.
Yeah.
Like we have the Reavers or whatever, we have cyborg people going after them, but that's completely different. So I'm hoping there's not going to be that sort of drag-out fight. But the one thing that I feel like I'm going to miss from this that we had in Old Man Logan is the idea of Logan being a pacifist and never popping his claws until the very end. Like, we see him, unless everything we've seen of him popping his claws and him running through the woods and stuff is the very end of the movie, which I would love. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case.
Yeah, probably not.
I would love to see that side of it, but I don't think so. I think we're going to get something very different that will have elements of this story and maybe be a spiritual adaptation, in that it's a story about an old Logan who's done with all of this and just wants to sort of live in peace, and then gets pulled into a situation he doesn't want to be in. But that's why I didn't necessarily want to, call this the book the movie is based on, because outside of it being sort of a road trip movie and this being a road trip book, all of those other elements are too ingrained in the Marvel universe to make it into an X-Men movie, because it's Fox, not Marvel.
Yeah.
So what is the one thing then that you were most looking forward to for this upcoming, not this upcoming, but next weekend with Logan?
Seeing Logan. Well, because
Okay.
we already talked about that I'm excited to see the world that they're in.
Yeah.
Know. So that's the thing that I'm most excited for, is to see, what the setting of this movie is going to be. And, how Xavier's, plan for, mutants and humans living in cohabitation has apparently not worked out. So
That's true. We will see a very broken Charles Xavier, I
yeah.
think.
As much as I think it'll be awesome to get to see, blood in a superhero movie and get to see, Wolverine and even Xavier getting to drop an F-bomb or two, it is just the setting of the movie that I'm most excited for. So that is for me what I'm really anticipating.
Okay. Well, then that will close our discussion, our topic of the week, and our discussion on Old Man Logan. It was a good book.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. If you're old enough, go and pick it up. I know you can get it in multiple different paperback printings and hardcovers, and I'm sure you can find it online, digitally. I know you can get it on ComiXology as individual issues or as one big go, and your library might even have it. Maybe. You want to bring us into the end of the show there, Liam?
Sure. Skiddly-bop-a-doo-bop-a-ding, dee-doo-doo-doo-doo, skiddly-bop-a-doo-doo, the comic box.
And that is it for this week, you guys. We are going to close the comic box. Thank you, Liam, as always, for joining me.
And thank you, as always, for having me.
If you like Liam and you want Liam to come back, head over to iTunes, leave us a star rating and a review. We certainly appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're new. If you visited us because you picked up one of our flyers at Tolcon and you're a new listener, hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you had a good time.
I wish I could say hello in Elvish or Dwarvish or something.
West through Tolkien fans Hall. That's Old English. That's in the book. In the movie, it's... I'm going to geek out here. In the movie, it's Éowyn who says it to Aragorn while handing him a cup to drink from, but I believe in the book it's Aragorn who says it to Theoden. It's sort of Hail Theoden, but it's Westhu Theoden Hal or something like that. It's one of the only things that I remember that was of another language in there. Anyway, this show is part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. You can head to geektogeekcast.net and sign up for email updates on all of the shows in the Geek to Geeks podcast network. If you want to have a longer conversation, you want to help us really dig in and start talking about Logan, what we're looking forward to seeing, this is where the conversation is going to be taking place once we see the movie. We will obviously record, but if you want to get together with the rest of the fans, we have a subreddit. It is subreddit.com/r/geektogeekcast. There is always a weekly geekery thread up there that is started by one of the listeners from one of our shows. We don't do it ourselves, so come on over and share your own weekly geekery. You can find me on Twitter at Noby, at KNOWBY. You can find us and this show and all of our comic box goodness at Comic Box Cast on Twitter. Liam's on Facebook.
That I am.
So I will have a link to Liam's his Facebook profile, so you can go and be friends with him. And don't forget, feel free, find us on Steam too. I don't get to play games much, but Liam does. Go play some Rocket League with Liam.
Crotch
Niblet on Steam. Finally, if you have a long diatribe, but as we have said before, no, what was it? You can send me a diatribe, but you cannot do a manifesto.
Yep.
You can get to us at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. Did I forget anything, Liam?
I don't think you did. I think you wrapped it up all nice and square-like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then we are going to close the box. We will see you guys next week when we're going to pull the curtain back and take a look at the comic book industry as an industry.
That wasn't very good. Expose.
That's right. I didn't say that very well. The comics industry as an industry.
So friendly and light. Yeah, we're going to really dig in there. We're going to uncover some truths, I think. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. It'll hurt.
I think we need Robert Stack for the...
Oh, is he still around?
I think he is. If he isn't, for shame on Hollywood for not telling us of his death.
Yeah, because Robert Stack.
Yeah, we've got the Oscars coming up. If he's not on the death list,
They'd keep him on there every year, even if he passed away 10 years ago. You still want him on the in memoriam reel for the Oscars.
And it would be one last unsolved mystery.
And with that, ba-da-ba-ba-doo-ba-bow, ba-da-da-ba-da-ba-doop-doo-doo.
Skittle-a-doo, diddle-it-bop, skittle-a-doo-da-doo-doo-doo.
Ba-da-ba-ba-doo, comic box, talking about the old man Logan. I suppose that should have been like a twangy thing instead, like ba-down, down, ba-down, bow, 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 bow. You know, where it's like that low guitar bass and the like electric guitar up top. So it's kind of that new age, like Desperado. Just take the soundtrack from Desperado.
Yeah. When in doubt, take from Desperado.
I'm Void.
And I'm Beej.
And together, we're the Geek to Geek podcast. Well, we make it. It is kind of us, but I guess it's separate.
Every week, we pick a topic from geek or digital culture and chat about it for a while.
And you're invited. We talk about books and movies, games, comics, the internet.
Or really whatever we feel like.
Yeah, that too.
So look for the Geek to Geek podcast on iTunes.
Or wherever your podcasts are sold, or downloaded, or whatever.